Have you noticed your photos coming out too blue and cool or too orange and warm? If so, it's nothing wrong with your camera, it just means your white balance is off. In this video, we're going to discuss what is white balance and how to properly set it. And welcome to the channel. I'm Tony Mullengarden. I'm a photographer. I do beginner photography tips and content creator tips. If that's something you're interested in, be sure to subscribe for future videos. Before we dive into white balance, we need to discuss color temperature. If you've ever noticed noon during a sunny day, the light appears almost white. Everything is a very neutral tone about it color-wise. Whereas at sunset, you'll notice the light appears very warm and orange. Those are both examples of differing color temperature. Now back to what I said originally, are your photos coming out too blue and cool or too warm and orange? But when you were taking the photo, most likely everything looked very natural. What you were seeing wasn't translating to what you were seeing in your camera or when you went to review the photos in post. That's because our eyes are extremely good at adjusting color when we're in different lighting situations. Our cameras though sometimes don't automatically compensate for different lighting situations and adjusting for the color. And that's why white balance is important when you're out shooting, to ensure that you're adjusting your camera appropriately to adjust for the differing color temperatures. Now, how is color temperature measured? Well, color temperature is measured by Kelvin. When you see that K marking in your white balance settings, that is referring to Kelvin. Now I want to stop right here and mention that Kelvin does not measure brightness. It's about the color of the light. What are some examples of Kelvin temperatures? 1000 and 2000 Kelvin typically refers to like a candle light, whereas 5200 to 6000 Kelvin typically the color of daylight or a standard flash color. And when you get to around 6500 Kelvin to 8000 Kelvin, it's typically the color of light when it's cloudy or when you're in the shade. Now that we understand color temperature, we can discuss white balance and how to properly set it. As the name suggests, white balance means you are balancing the colors in your image. In other words, when you adjust your white balance, you're actually adding the opposite color to the image in order to get back to a neutral color overall. So let's say in camera, the photo's appearing too cool and blue. So we need to adjust our white balance to adding the opposite color, which would of course be more warm and orange. As you add that warm and orange to the cool blue image, you're getting to that more of a natural state of the image that you're actually seeing with your eyes. This is also known as removing color cast from your image. So now that we know what white balance does, how do we actually set it? Well, it's not that complicated. Now, in your camera settings, you'll see WB or a white balance setting. That's where you can set it accordingly. Most DSLR mirrorless cameras also have a custom white balance setting. This allows you to set a reference for the white balance and customize the Kelvin to a precise temperature. Now, that is a more advanced topic which we can discuss in the future. For now, let's look at the basic white balance setting. Your auto white balance is fairly accurate, especially if you are outdoors. However, when you go indoors and there's multiple different lighting sources and lighting situations that can occur, your camera sometimes won't understand how to accurately set the white balance. This is where you need to understand how each of those white balance presets work in order to set the white balance appropriately. The sun icon, of course, refers to direct sunlight, so when you're out shooting during a very bright sunny day, make sure you set it to that icon. The next icon is that cloud, which of course you'd use during a cloudy day, but also this can be used to bring more warmth into your image. The next icon is that house with the shadow. If your subject is in a lot of shade or you notice your image is really cool and blue, try utilizing that setting instead to bring even more warmth in the image to get to that natural look. That bulb icon refers to tungsten light bulbs, or the typical light bulb you'll see in someone's household. Now, I would recommend not using this setting in any other situations unless you are in a typical household with those tungsten bulbs. The tungsten light bulb setting will add too much blue to your image. The other preset is the glowing tube or the fluorescent bulb. That can be used, of course, when you're in a situation where there's a lot of overhead fluorescent lighting. So those are all the white balance presets that most cameras have that you can set while you're shooting. Even if you forget to set your white balance settings and you get back and see, oh no, my photos are too cool and blue or too warm and orange, don't fear. You can still fix these photos in post, because in most softwares like Capture One and Lightroom, you can adjust the white balance to how you want it to look. There's one caveat though. To take advantage of doing this in post, you need to be shooting in RAW. So I recommend moving forward, make sure your camera is taking photos in RAW. If you still want to have JPEGs, you can always set it to RAW and JPEG. But either way, I recommend moving forward. If you ever want to shoot photos and make sure that you can edit them in post, shoot your photos in RAW. So now that you understand white balance, what it is, how to set it, and even how to fix it in post, you now can move forward and make sure that every time you're out shooting, you're properly setting your white balance. If you have any questions about white balance, or you have any tips for others about how you set your white balance, make sure to leave them in the comments below. Get out there and keep creating.